LSU falls to UCLA in their season opener, 38-27, a victory for the Brewers. LSU has dropped consecutive season openers for the first time since the mid-90s. And Musso, I hear a lot of fans, a lot of people kind of pine for the days of Joe Brady and his system and him being here at LSU, but the Tigers on defense have been lost defensively ever since Dave Aranda left LSU or left Baton Rouge. And we talk a lot about the Bo Pelini effect and how things are going to be fixed this season, at least in terms of getting lined up and communication and making in-game adjustments, things that we did not see last season. But unfortunately, a lot of that was the same against UCLA. Again, when you're able to run the ball 40-plus times, 47 times, and only had to throw it 16 while you gain 210 rushing yards, that makes your job as a play caller a lot easier. But LSU just not physical on defense. Again, they did not make those adjustments, and it looked a lot like last season.
Looked too much like last season. And you know what? Look, we'll let Coach O tell you. This is number 4 when asked about if they saw similar issues on defense.
We had some similar stuff, crossing routes, missed assignments. Those things continue to haunt us and hurt us. We have to get them fixed. I thought that we did a pretty good job in camp of getting them fixed, but obviously we've got to look at what we're doing and still eliminate those crossing routes and those busting coverage and why we busted them. And then also eliminate having an open gap in the run defense. Now, whether we got knocked off the ball or it's an open gap, I need to look at it on film.
You mentioned that they only threw the ball 16 times and the DTR only completed about 9 of them. I think just about every single one of those 9 were to somebody who was just wide open. I mean, which you talk about something that looked like last year. You heard it a lot. They've cut down the big plays. You didn't have the guys running free in camp. Look, LSU's defense came out and they got a really, really good start from the group, man. Look, they played very, very well for a quarter and a half. And when LSU scored that first touchdown, we kind of alluded to it a little bit in the first 7. It looked like they were starting to settle in, that Max was kind of starting to find his footing in the game on the road, and you felt good. You can't tell me, even though you sort of started on offense, how you were playing on defense. And when LSU scored that first touchdown, the majority of LSU fans had to think to themselves, all right, here we go. Like, here comes the team that we've been hearing about. And then after one play in 75 yards, you're tied, and quite honestly, the air is just completely ripped out of the team. It almost felt like the defense had a, oh crap, here we go again type feeling, because that's the one thing you didn't want to see happen was the big play. Mario, we talked a lot last week about if UCLA does this, they win. If LSU does this, they win. One of the things we said for UCLA was an early turnover. They didn't necessarily get the early turnover, but what we were alluding to that is momentum. That play, it was the same thing. Basically, in essence, it was exactly that. They were able to snatch all the momentum away, and even though LSU got closer, 14-10 at half, and you feel pretty good about them making adjustments, coming back out and potentially winning that game, they didn't make the adjustments. And even when they were still down 7 late in that game, it felt like they were down far worse.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up, with the defense having the oh no moment, because do you remember when we were making the comparison of this game to the 2016 Wisconsin game last year, and I talked about a Brandon Harris play where they're like, okay, they got to draw something up easy for him here, throw it close to the line of scrimmage. He threw it 10 yards over Malachi Dupree's head, and I had that feeling of, oh no, here we go again. Whenever Dulrich broke that 70-yard touchdown pass, I had that same feeling, and I had to stop myself for a second and give a lot of credit to David Cobb, who came on this show multiple times, writer for CBS Sports, who called UCLA's upset of LSU months ago, like back in April, June. And as soon as that play happened, the Dulrich 70-yard touchdown catch and run, he texted me and said, I can't believe I went on your show, Mario, and said that Dulrich is not capable of taking the top off of defense, because that's what he just did. And obviously UCLA's offense kind of went as their running backs went in this game. You had to throw Roses at Zach Charbonnet, who ran for 117 yards and a touchdown on just 11 carries. Unreal efficiency. And then he and Britton Brown combined ran the ball 28 times for 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. So again, props to those guys. That's why it was what it was. But going back to the theme of it looked a lot like last year, how much did Coach O talk about eliminated the chunk plays? There were way too many chunk plays here. We talked about the touchdown catch, 75 yards for Dulrich. Kyle Phillips had a catch for 45 yards. Casimir Allen had a catch for 36 yards. And Charbonnet, previously mentioned, had a run of 43 yards and a catch of 35 yards. So of the 475 yards given up by LSU, 234 of those came on just 5 plays. So one thing is when you're getting good individual efforts, guys are getting angles and winning individual reps, individual plays. Another thing is, like you said, when you see guys getting wide open, you see guys having chunk play after chunk play. And when that happens, it's kind of easier to blame the coaching staff because clearly the scheme is not working here.
And the situational defense wasn't very good either, Mario. Particularly the one play that comes to mind is the 3rd and 15 late in the game, where if you hold UCLA there, they kick a field goal and you're still only down 7 and you're within striking distance. And not only did you give up the 3rd and 15, you gave it up to Dulrich, the one guy who you really can't let beat you. It's just, you know that's who they're going to be looking for there because he's their best threat in the passing game.
Leading receiver, yeah.
And he beat you. And they score a touchdown, and it's over, really over after that. You fall down 11 points.
And I will blame the coach in there, like before the catch, but we got to get on Major Burns for the effort shown making that tackle. It looks like he's just kind of diving at Dulrich's ankle there. For all that he's been hyped up, coming over from Georgia, local product, you would like to see him at least make a better effort to make that play. And then Derek Stingley as well. We mentioned a big play from Phillips, touchdown at the end. He looks like he's trying to strip the ball. He just makes a terrible effort on that defensive play. And you saw a lot of former players, calling out the schemes. Ryan Clark was talking about crossers on Twitter in a very angry fashion, but then Tyrann Mathieu as well was calling out the coaching for LSU as well and blaming the technique as well as the effort. But the main criticism that he had for the LSU coaching staff is saying that in his tweet, I put this on coaches. It's tough to watch. Play after play, we lose leverage. Technique is poor across the board. Tackling is poor. Communication is non-existent. Effort is not up to LSU standard. And again, we can see certain plays where clearly the effort was not being made. LSU did not have the energy that UCLA made throughout the game. But again, the coaching too, a lot of this you can see is stuff that's not schemed properly and guys just running open. Again, very similar, way too similar to what we saw last year.
And then there's the lack of adjustments, which might be the biggest similarity. Mario, we mentioned kind of at the top of the segment that LSU played really well for a quarter and a half on defense. You had 2 bad defensive possessions in the first half. Let's be honest. You had 2. They did both result in touchdowns, but you're right there, 14-10. There's plenty good that still happened on defense in the first half to build off of. It just wasn't done. You continued to see Dulrich beat you. You continued to see Zach Charbonnet just gash and gash and gash. And a defensive line that was thought to be one of the strengths of this team, it was a carbon copy of last year. They ended up with 4 sacks, 3 of them from the defensive line. But other than that, they were just shoved backwards all game.
Yeah, they got worn down, and it goes back to what we were talking about last segment, but now on the other side of the football, UCLA was winning 1st and 2nd down. Whenever they did have a shorter 3rd down, that obviously makes your job a lot easier as a play caller whenever you're Chip Kelly. And the few times that LSU was able to get them into 3rd and 12, 3rd and 14, they were able to find the weakness again and convert. So situationally, a lot of stuff definitely needs to improve from the LSU defense. But at the end of the day, Musso, I think the linebackers, who were definitely a concern for both of us going into this game, are a much bigger concern than I thought. And we know why Jared Small was now getting a lot of reps with the starters. And you see how much they missed Jared Small, frankly. I think he would have helped out a lot, at least in terms of diagnosing things and making sure LSU is lined up. But that, along with the offensive line, continues to be a concern and maybe even worse than we thought.
It was just tough. It was tough to watch, man. It was a really tough watch of the 60-minute game for LSU fans everywhere because it for all the promise that you thought this team showed, it's not nearly as bright of a view going forward. I know we had the line in here, and we spent a lot of time talking about LSU's win total, especially on this show, about it being 8.5. LSU now needs to go 6-2 in SEC play to beat that 8.5, and I'm here to tell you that's just not going to happen.
That's asking a lot.
This team, I don't think this team is a 6-2 team in the conference. You're looking at, could they maybe get to 8 wins? Sure, but right now, let's be honest. You look up and down that schedule, it's hard to find those wins right now. Just knowing how they played and knowing that you now start to question, can this group fix what needs to happen? What needs to be fixed? All of it's fixable, right? If it's technique and scheme, all of that's fixable, but there's finger pointing, there's blame, and people now start to openly question, can the current group fix what needs to be fixed? I don't know.
Yeah, and that's kind of what to watch going forward. The team last year faced a lot of adversity early on, and they kind of wilted. They kind of folded until the last 2 games, if we're keeping it real. At least that's what I saw. Now this team is facing a lot of adversity. You're counting on a lot of young guys in kind of big roles for the first time, and you're counting on a lot of veteran guys that are now being looked at as leaders. And it's not all to a good start at all, Musso, but they really got to show, LSU does, that they can weather the adversity this time around a whole lot better than last season, because if it continues to compound and it continues to get worse, we're going to have to start having some really tough conversations on this show, and it's going to be a really tough season for the LSU Tigers.